All right, this is my third take of this video. So I want to make a video talking about my dating experiences and, just what the dating scene is like, because I saw a post from someone on one of my social medias, threads specifically, where they just kept hearing horror stories about dating in general, just very few good stories. So I figured I would just give my perspective as to why that is. Now, this is just coming from the perspective of me as a guy, so I'm pretty sure that there are, maybe some women can relate, maybe they can't. I mean, I'm just offering my perspective. So I've used dating apps in the past. I still have my dating app profiles. I just don't use them. The reason why is I've come to learn over time, and this was just through my own conclusions, but eventually they were proven, through videos that have surfaced online, that, a lot of these dating apps are very predatory towards guys. There will be bot accounts that are made by people not affiliated with the dating apps, or even people affiliated with the dating apps, to lure men in so they can pay money basically to talk to, these supposed women, only to find out that they're being catfished or just, reeled in by a bot. There's that financial incentive for these people who run these dating apps to actually create fake accounts to lure men in to pay for these apps. So whether that's true or not, the fact that I can make that statement and the fact that that is also a valid statement to make means that men are going to be hesitant to actually use dating apps. Doesn't mean they don't altogether, but it's going to make a lot of men hesitant to use them. But for the ones that do, and for the ones that see past the bots and, and the potential, inactive accounts or deactivated accounts from users who, forgot to either deactivate their profile, or from users that never had their data scrubbed from the site, there are a lot of cases of ghosting. And, I understand that we don't owe each other explanations as to, why we're not interested. That's fine. But it would be nice if people just told one another if they're not interested, so we can move on and just not feel bad about it. I feel like over time, the more ghosting has gone on for men, the more they're just thrown off from actually even trying to talk to people, and specifically talk to women. And I feel like, with ghosting, you're basically just being ignored. And over time, that pain kind of builds up to just anger and resentment. And you just have a group of men that view women as evil, when that's not the case, obviously. Because we have our differences, men and women. And that's another thing. I mean, just quick aside, I've seen, posts from men and posts from women attacking one another based off a few bad experiences and just blackboxing an entire gender. And I feel like it's a load of bullshit. We could sit here and argue back and forth about the differences in men and women all day, but the fact of the matter is we're always going to have our differences. We just need to learn to accept those differences and move forward. Now, not all men are bad. Not all women are bad. But the ones that are bad have, gotten a lot of attention and have painted a very, poor picture for both sides of the aisle. For men, it's ghosting and eventual resentment of women over time, or the just feeling of loneliness and isolation that, fuels basically a depressive cycle. And, losing my train of thought. But, in addition to the ghosting, there are also the cases of men being shamed online by women who are trying to seek attention. There was a video I saw a while back of a woman in a gym, basically, setting up the camera and, taking off, her pump cover, so to say, and to reveal that she was wearing, kind of skimpy gym clothing And, a guy who was with the trainer at the other end of the gym caught a quick glance of her, and then, went back to his set. And the woman just pans the camera over there and, like, paints him as a creep. Those types of cases where men are being shamed for literally just catching glances, that sours the mood for everyone else, and that ruins it for everyone else. Because now what's a guy going to think if he approaches a woman, in the gym or somewhere else, and they, start recording him and, labeling him as a creep and putting him on the spot and making him uncomfortable to potentially say something that might be damning. Who knows? But I don't blame men for not wanting to deal with that. And that's just one instance. There are many other instances that have been posted online. A lot of the negative shit gets highlighted easily, and it just throws things off for, in this case, men. I mean, women too, but, in my case, my perspective, it throws things off for men. It makes them very hesitant to approach women in public when they just don't want to play that game. And, another thing, and actually this is one that I thought about actually just recently, is that a trend that I'm seeing is that a lot of people tend to go about their life with a mental illness that's not being diagnosed at all, and then they get into a relationship only to find out later on that relationship falls apart because of their mental illness, but they only find this out later. I feel like a lot of people are left untreated for mental health issues, and I feel like that's a serious problem here, especially, in America. Granted, we've made strides forward, but, there's still a long way to go. But I'm noticing that trend, and I am no exception to that trend. I had what is considered by textbook definition an abusive stepfather. And the things that he did and his worldview bled out into my personality and molded me into being, not quite an exact copy of him, but my behaviors are similar to his. And I only realize that now because I have had 3 separate people finally tell me through their own eyes, through their own perspective, that man was abusive. He may have never struck me, but he was abusive. I'm not going to go into specifics, but, had I known that and had I gotten treated earlier, maybe I would still be in a long-time relationship. But that's just one thing that I've noticed recently with a lot of posts that I'm seeing online. But another thing is that just people are so busy nowadays. Everyone's working as much as they can just to try to survive, when it wasn't that way. But people hardly have any money anymore, and people just don't have any time. So how are they going to go out on a date, let alone a date that costs money? That makes it very hard, as you can imagine. It's just, with the rise of the internet and rise of social media, we become more connected, but at the same time, we don't think as much as we should. We don't scrutinize the information that's presented before us. And that just leads to a lot of negative outcomes that we're now seeing. You have people painting their own stories about, men or women being evil, and the other side takes it, eats it up, and they just get discouraged. Or, your side sees, your post attacking the other side, and they might agree with you, and now all of a sudden you just have a back and forth between 2 genders who, view each other as evil. And we have our differences. Men and women are always going to have their differences. But in my eyes, we're all human. Man or woman makes no difference. You all have the same potential in my eyes. Generally speaking, are men stronger than women physically? For the most part, yes. But there are women out there who are physically stronger than most men. And those are usually the elite athletes. But it is possible. So I can't just make that statement that, all women are weaker than men. That is not an accurate statement. A more accurate statement is that men in general are stronger than women, but that does not mean that women are also not stronger than men. That there aren't women out there that are stronger than men. So, basic logic. And sadly, the human population, as intelligent as we are compared to other species, we're overall just not the brightest species, at least in my opinion. And this is coming from a guy that views himself as an idiot, but other people say that I'm very intelligent. So take that whatever you will. But, it's just the digital age has just really, it's improved a lot of lives, but it's also ruined a lot of the human experience. And it's also what fuels my depression too. Because the way that I see it, we just live in an exploitative society where we're all pitted against each other, and we can watch it all happen online. Hell, we could paint a picture of reality that's not true, and we can get millions of people to believe it. And those people will eventually have, make choices that affect others, and that's just a cascading effect of just negativity. So, and just with, our current system and how it's exploitative, it just shows that greed is destroying us all. It's destroying us, not just in terms of finances, our way of life, but our relationships. Well, that'd be considered a way of life, but it's destroying relationships, it's destroying finances, it's destroying our views of what the world really is. It's destroying also our sense of purpose, I feel, because we are so divided as a species, and it's saddening to see because, I don't know what's best for humanity, but I feel like humanity has a greater purpose than sitting on this rock arguing with one another about who should have more of what, when there's plenty to go around and we could be working towards a better tomorrow. We could be working towards exploring the universe and understanding more of it and understanding our place within it and potentially becoming the gods we speak so highly of. But we don't do that. So, but anyway, overall, the dating scene has become rough. It's not hopeless, but it is rough. So, at least hope that was helpful. This was just my perspective. Doesn't mean everything I've stated is going to be true. I feel like some of those statements that I've made are true, but I feel like, some of them could be up for debate. And that's fine. So, but anyway, that's all for now. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.